Late 19th Century Fashion by Hannah Titus. In 19th century society, fashion was a key to showing social position and wealth. Only those in the extreme levels, such as very rich or very poor, would stray from the dictations of the time. In a book published in 1876 called How to Dress Well on a Shilling a Day, the author, Sylvia, stated that poverty must, above all things, avoid the appearance of poverty. Even those that didn't have a lot of money wanted to hold up to the expectations of the time. The fashion of the Victorian period involved a lot of corsets, bonnets, top hats, bustles, and petticoats. Women typically wore full skirts that moved to the back of the silhouette. Towards the end of this period, a less restrictive aesthetic style began to emerge. The aesthetic movement was in the mid-Victorian era. It was an art movement initially, but greatly influenced fashion as well. Aesthetic dress was a protest against the contemporary style of bustles and restrictive corsets. This style embraced softer, more comfortable clothing that may have appeared looser on women. The aesthetics viewed corsets and the rigidity that came with them as unattractive and artificial in a way. This is because they were seen as unnatural. The aesthetic movement could also be considered a fashion revolution. During this time, fashion designers looked for more natural styles. They objected to mass production at the time that had become so popular. They believed that this took away from individual craftsmanship. Models no longer depicted the petite blonde girls that it did before, but instead tall and strong women with messy, long, red or brunette hair, as seen in the pictures. The aesthetic dress offered many new things. The way of dress offered more freedom of movement. Instead of stiff, rigid styles, women now wore long, flowing dresses. They had soft pleats, folds, and smocking. The dresses often featured a small train. The sleeves were set at a shoulder edge, opposite to the Victorian style, which featured a drop shoulder, restricting arm movement. The dresses didn't have a lot of embellishment, but instead featured more natural embroidery, such as floral themes. The lily and sunflower are examples of things that were used a lot. Aesthetics disliked the new manufactured alien dyes, and opted to use more natural vegetable dyes. The colors used were also a lot more natural and considered muted. Some examples of aesthetic dress were the Watteau back dress and the tea gown. The Watteau back dress, as seen on the left, had a large pleat at the upper back that cascaded down to the floor and caught up at the hemline. The tea gown was based on aesthetic style and was worn at home, usually while entertaining guests. As you can see in these examples, accessories were not worn abundantly. Jewelry was kept simple, usually containing amber or Eastern-inspired jewelry. Though the aesthetic fashion was used by many, not everybody approved of it. Many ridiculed this style in the media. They had made fun of the red, messy-haired women that became popular in the aesthetic arts. Though many men stuck to the usual Victorian style, some of them did change to a more aesthetic style as well. Males' aesthetic dress typically included long hair, a languid manner, velvet jackets, and a velvet knee breeches. This was not much of a change from the usual Victorian male style, and it stayed mostly the same throughout the whole Victorian period. The 19th century fashion changes were reflected in both genders, but were far more aimed at women's fashion. It presented a less restricted and more comfortable way of dress. Women were offered more movement and essentially more freedom. Men did not change their style as much, as it basically stayed the same throughout the whole century.